At issue this week, midterm races now underway. Progressive-backed candidates won big in Pennsylvania. What does that say about the mood of the Democratic Party? And what can it tell us about what's in store for elections this fall? And saving for the future, Philadelphia voters chose to create a new option when it comes to building a cushion for retirement. We'll talk to an expert about the Philly Saves program and who it could benefit. And New Jersey's up next. We'll preview Tuesday's primary in the Garden State, where in one local district, voters are choosing from among at least a dozen candidates. Why one political observer says we could see more crowded races like this in the future.
NBC10 At Issue starts now.
I'm Lauren Mayk. Welcome to NBC10 At Issue. In Pennsylvania, the matchups are now set. Democrats and Republicans are gearing up for the midterms this fall. We'll be watching races in 4 potentially competitive swing districts. The 1st district, which covers much of Bucks County, the 7th district in the Lehigh Valley, the 8th district in the northeast corner of the state, and the 10th district, which covers part of the south central region of the state, including Harrisburg. In that 7th district race in the Lehigh Valley, Firefighters Union leader Bob Brooks was victorious in the Democratic primary. Brooks was endorsed by both progressive U.S. Senator Bernie Sanders and Governor Josh Shapiro. In the competitive primary in the 3rd district, Philadelphia voters chose self-described Democratic socialist Chris Rabb. The current state representative defeated 2 establishment-backed candidates to win his party's nomination in one of the bluest districts in the entire country. He's now on track to replace retiring Congressman Dwight Evans. I sat down with Rabb after his victory.
I'm going to be the bonus rep of a lot of people who do not feel seen or heard in electoral politics or governance, and I want to represent them too, all communities of struggle.
You can see my full interview with Chris Rabb on a recent episode of my Battleground Politics podcast. It's streaming now on NBC10.com or wherever you get your podcasts. To talk more about the primary results and to look ahead to the general election in the fall, I'm joined by a pair of political insiders. Patrick Murphy is a former Democratic congressman. He is also the former acting secretary of the U.S. Army. And Guy Shiraki is a Republican who previously ran for Congress, and he is now a columnist at Broad and Liberty. Welcome to you both.
Thanks, Lauren.
I know we are in Pennsylvania right now. We're going to talk about Pennsylvania and the midterms coming up. But let's start in New Jersey because we've got the New Jersey primary coming up on Tuesday. And I want to sort of set the stage for there. There's a number of races that we're watching there. What did the results in Pennsylvania tell you about what to expect in New Jersey?
I think that it's going to be another change election. I think people are upset. They're pissed off about gas prices at $4.54 a gallon. They're pissed off about the affordability issues. And I think in that New Jersey race, you have an up-and-comer in that, especially that Tom Keene seat.
That's North Jersey.
Yeah, North Jersey. But you have Tom Keene, again, comes from a dynasty family, Republican dynasty, versus Rebecca Bennett, who I think will win this primary, who is a naval aviator, Wharton graduate, and is showing that she could win in those tough areas as a moderate, but can coalesce the Democratic base to put her over the top. And I think we'll be successful in the fall.
And we'll see. There's a number of people running to take him on. That is definitely one I think both sides are watching, and certainly that one is a little bit unusual also because Congressman Kane has been out of Washington for a while, for a couple of months, and with a medical issue. We haven't gotten any details on that, but there have been questions about when he's coming back and some transparency questions there as well.
Look, first of all, I think everybody hopes that he's well.
Certainly.
And gets well soon. And I would say this, look, he's well known to the voters, and he's viewed as a common sense elected official. So if he's able to come back and campaign and be who he is, he's the type of candidate that can win a tight race. If obviously he's not up to the job, or heaven forbid they have to switch candidates, it's a whole different story. But those are one of the races you're going to look at on election night and see how big of a shift, will there be a huge shift to the Democratic Party, or is it more of an ebb and flow locally? That's one of the races you'll look at, but only look at if Congressman Kane's able to come back and be who he really is.
So that's North Jersey. And South Jersey, you've got Congressman Van Drew, who was a Democrat. He is now a Republican. Democrats have been trying to get this seat for a number of cycles and have not been successful. Do they have a shot this time?
I don't know, I would say my focus group as spending half my life in Ocean City, there are still Jeff Van Drew signs in people's front lawns that have clearly been there through several cycles. So
and two parties.
Yes, right. So I mean, I think there are diehard Republicans, but I think there are also Van Drew people. Look, he's one of the folks I think wins no matter what. If Jeff Van Drew is not going back to Congress, it'll be a really ugly night for Republicans. My bet is he goes back.
Yeah, I'm also a fan of what we call the Irish Riviera, North Wildwood, where all the cops and firefighters in Philadelphia go down. And I'm there this weekend. But I will tell you that I do think that Jeff Van Drew, I was actually recruiting him as a Democrat to run for Congress against Frank Lobiando about literally 15 years ago.
Republican congressman.
And so eventually runs and wins, but then, as we know, switches parties. But there's a reason why Donald Trump goes every year to Wildwood, New Jersey, pretty much, and has these political rallies. And, you know, they love him down there, and it's the Republican area.
We'll see if we see him again. And that actually is a good transition to Pennsylvania and to a district where I think a lot of people would be surprised if they saw President Trump, which is Bucks County, which is it's a county that you know well. Congressman Brian Fitzpatrick is the incumbent there. Bob Harvey is the Democrat who was victorious in the primary. So we now know that that is the matchup there. Bucks County is purple, and it's kind of, you know, the Democrats did really well there last year. How do you see this race right now? You know this district really well. You served there.
Yeah, no, I'm 2-1 there. It's my home. I love Bucks County, but it is literally the purple county in a purple state. And, you know, the last really close race that Brian Fitzpatrick had, and again, I beat his brother, and he's no longer with us, but the last close race that Brian Fitzpatrick had was actually in the first Trump midterm. So Trump wins in 16. Scott Wallace in 18, and we're talking single digits. Now you have the Trump midterm, which I think he's lower in the rankings, lower in polling, meaning President Trump in his first midterm, but he's going against a guy, Bob Harvey, who has never lost a countywide election in Bucks County. Was a very, very popular supervisor in Falls Township, been a county commissioner, been chair of the county commissioners, and is a straight-laced guy that's a good family guy, that son of a veteran. It's going to be neck and neck in Bucks.
Brian Fitzpatrick's going back to Congress. The Bucks County voters know him. They know his work ethic. They know at the end of the day he's a common sense conservative that does what he believes. Nobody believes that he does it for any other reason, not for any other politician, not for any party. He is a common sense conservative that people know, they trust. He's weathered storms. He's been there when Republicans win by 10 points. He's been there when Republicans lose by 10 points. Voters there trust him. And frankly, to meet Bob Harvey is to vote for Brian Fitzpatrick. I think Brian has earned it. Will it be a tough race? It always is for him, but he always finds a way, because I think at a certain level, the voters there have made their judgment on him and they know they can trust him.
Guy, let me ask you about how Republicans will approach things like the Bucks County race with Congressman Fitzpatrick, and then contrast that with the Lehigh Valley and Ryan McKenzie. And when you're crafting a message that this is going to be your message for the midterms, whether that's on Iran and whether or not, you know, that is whether that the choices that the president made is a good one, whether it's on other economic things. How do you craft a message that's going to work both in Bucks County when you've got somebody like Congressman Fitzpatrick who is willing to say, you know, hey, I don't like this fund or I don't like this ballroom, and then in places like the Lehigh Valley or other places where it's just a different story?
My advice to all of them is twofold. One is you have to talk about what you've done and your role in the district. And I think Ryan McKenzie, I've shared it with others, he reminds me of former Congressman Gerlach from Chester County, which is somebody who knows local issues, is at local town meetings, has been in the community forever, is raising his family there. I think he has a unique connection to the Lehigh Valley, and he's known and trusted there. First, and then the second is on all the things we talk about, from grocery prices to gasoline prices. I think the fundamental question Republicans will say is they're not going to do what Democrats did and say they're not real problems. They're going to say, who do you really trust to fix these things ultimately? Because they are hard, they are complicated. And in my opinion, these things started a long time ago. So my advice to Republicans is that recognize the concerns people feel at the kitchen table when they go shopping, but ask voters, who do you think is more likely to fix it? The people who started this mess or the people trying to fix it? And if you're Ryan McKenzie, run as Ryan McKenzie. Again, I think he is known in that community. He is a good guy, and I think he's one of those guys that even in a bad night will eke it out by half a point.
And he did, by the way, have a vote regarding healthcare subsidies that did set him apart a little bit from the administration. Let's stay in the Lehigh Valley and ask about a different Bob Brooks, who won that primary. And he had an interesting coalition backing him. It included Governor Shapiro and also the Working Families Party, Bernie Sanders. It was sort of an interesting coalition. So does that then translate to being able to get independents?
No doubt. And I think, listen, Bob Brooks, firefighter, also known in the community. And I do think those independent voters who go for Josh Shapiro, Governor Shapiro will be at the top of the ticket, very popular in the Lehigh Valley. And I think he's setting the right tone. He understands that politics is the art of inclusion. And that's why he's been able to bring this coalition together, really crush it in a primary, in a tough primary. And I think it's looking pretty good for him this fall.
What is the dance that Democrats are doing right now in terms of energy and momentum with the progressive wing of the party, which has had some recent wins, including in Philadelphia, where State Representative Chris Rabb won the primary, a very hotly contested primary, and won that. What's sort of the dance that Democrats are doing right now? Because you want to capture that energy, but the question is everybody on the same page? Yeah,
listen, the last 10 elections have been change elections. This one is no different. So in that Philadelphia seat, having a former state party chair or state senator, trying to get elevated to the U.S. Congress, I think it hurt him that he's been in politics for decades, right? And comes from a family dynasty. So I think the dance that Democrats need to do is they need to look people in the eye and say, this is where I stand, and this is where I differ from my opponent, and this is why I'm fighting for you, and this is our differences. And be ready when they say, well, what are you different in the Democratic Party for? Or if you go to a Republican, what are you different? You better be ready for that answer. When I ran and won in Bucks County, no one gave me a shot, but I said, hey, listen, this federal debt is wrong. This Iraq war is wrong. And now what you're having is these massive affordability issues. What you have is an unnecessary war in Iran, which has jacked up prices all over the place. And I think people are sick and tired of it.
Chris Rabb is going to ultimately be a problem for the Democratic Party because he's now the Summer Lee, who's from Pittsburgh on the East Coast. This is a man who campaigned with the Working Families Party, campaigned with Hassan Piker, who on election night said, you know what, they said I was too radical, that I was too much of an upstart. Well, you ain't seen nothing yet. I think that's the question Republicans are going to say to folks, which is, we know that gasoline costs a lot. We know groceries cost a lot. But this is the alternative. The alternative is somebody says, you think I'm radical, you ain't seen nothing yet. Voters are going to have a tough choice. Which group do they trust to fix the problems? And I think the more the Chris Rabbs of the world talk about radical, you ain't seen nothing yet, the more Republicans have a chance. This is going to be a fight.
Not every Democratic candidate is a Chris Rabb, though. I mean, some of them are Sharif Street.
And you got to remember that district in Philadelphia, it's the most Democratic district in the whole country. The whole country. So I hear you, but to Lauren's earlier point, I think it boils down to independence. And independents want leaders. By the way, Donald Trump won independence in 2016 against Hillary, lost against Biden with independents, won again against Kamala Harris. So those independent voters in Pennsylvania, we have several 100,000 of them, will decide these midterms this fall.
But you're saying you think that ultimately this is something that Republicans will use to their advantage.
Oh, I think so. And I think, this guy running for the U.S. Senate in Maine. I mean, I think the question is really, I think the Democratic Party needs to come to grips with which party are they. And if they continue to be the party of AOC, Summer Lee, Chris Rabb, and this planner guy up in Maine, they're going to have a real problem. And I think independents are going to have a very tough choice because they're going to say, there are real problems. Which party's more likely to solve them? Because I agree, it's an election, we're going to say it. But if we talk about radicalization, and if we talk about anti-Semitism, when we talk about all the crazy stuff, I wonder what independents are going to do, and that's what we're going to learn over the next 6 months.
But I do think what the face of the Democratic Party in Pennsylvania is the Bob Brooks, the firefighter, is Bob Harvey, former school teacher, is Paige Kennedy, who won as an independent for mayor of Scranton, become the first woman ever. That is the face of the Democratic Party. They don't know who Graham is, planner up in Maine.
Right. We'll see where voters land. Thank you, gentlemen. Patrick Murphy and Guy Shiraki, thanks for joining us. Savings plan. On primary day, voters in Philadelphia chose to give workers in the city a new option to save for retirement. We'll talk to an expert about the Philly Saves program and who's eligible to take advantage of it.
This is NBC 10 At Issue.
During the May 19th Pennsylvania primary, Philadelphia voters approved a ballot question that will formally establish the Philadelphia Retirement Savings Program, known as Philly Saves. It's a way to help workers who don't have benefits that include 401ks or other employee-sponsored retirement plans. Now, while there are some states that have automatic individual retirement account programs, Philadelphia says it will be the first U.S. city to create its own version, specifically targeting workers whose employers do not offer plans. It's estimated that more than 200,000 private sector workers in the city lack access to a retirement savings program at their job. And joining us now to dig deeper on this program is John Scott. He is the project director for retirement savings at the Pew Charitable Trusts, which has supported the passage of that ballot question. John, thanks for taking the time to talk with us.
Thank you for having me.
So first of all, give us an overview of how this would work and who is eligible. What kinds of jobs might we be talking about?
Well, it would apply to all employers in the city that have at least one employee, and that could be for-profit businesses or that could be nonprofits as well. And essentially, if you work at a place that does not offer a retirement plan like a 401k, you would be automatically enrolled into the citywide retirement savings program. You'd have the ability to opt out at any time. But if you don't opt out, if you decide you want to participate, you would start contributing a set amount of pay. It's a little bit open-ended, between 3 or 6%. The board that will oversee the program will make that decision. And then if you're an employer, all you have to do is let the program know about your employees. And then if you do have employees that want to participate, you just need to do the payroll deductions. And that is really it. There's no fee for the employers. They just need to facilitate the program.
Let's talk about what this could mean in Philadelphia. I know you've done some research on the city itself and the population here. Why is this something that you think would be beneficial in Philadelphia?
Yeah, it's a great question. Well, I think we see around the whole country that we're aging as a country, and that a lot of people are entering into retirement with insufficient resources. And I think that's, one important goal is to make sure people have a decent standard of living in retirement. But the other issue is that if people don't have sufficient savings, not all, but some are going to need public assistance. So that means there's going to be a burden on state and local governments. And so if we can get people into the savings system, and as you noted in your intro, there are about 208,000 workers in the city that don't have access to a retirement plan. So if we can get some of those workers into the savings system as soon as possible, it's going to make things easier for them in old age, as well as alleviate the burden on taxpayers down the road. So I think there's some key issues that we're trying to address just by getting people to save a little bit more for retirement.
New Jersey is the next state in our area to hold a primary. Voters in one local district are picking from among at least a dozen candidates. The change, one political observer says, led to crowded fields like this, and why we could see more in elections to come.
This is NBC 10 At Issue.
Tuesday is primary day in New Jersey. In one district in Mercer County, there are more than a dozen names on the ballot for an open congressional seat. I discussed that crowded field with Mayk from Rider University. Let's start with where we are. We're here at Rider University.
Right.
And let's start with the race that is in your backyard.
Great.
Literally. It's very crowded.
It is.
Have you seen a race this crowded before?
We are getting them more and more. The end of the county organization line, the parties used to in New Jersey up until very recently could make recommendations by putting endorsed candidates in a favorable ballot position in the primary. That recommendation was known and understood by voters, and it really conferred a lot of advantage to those candidates who got the party endorsement. That process went away. It went away. We've talked about this because Andy Kim was not getting a fair shake. He challenged it. He said candidates should not get a preferred ballot position. Now
and he won in court.
He won in court, exactly. And so he ended the county line. That has created blessings and challenges. The blessing is that more candidates are running. They do not view it as an obstacle to take on their party anymore. That has gone away. They don't think that they have to just go up against their party. So voters are getting more choices. In one of the very first races we had, Congressman Payne died. There was a race to succeed him. We also got a dozen candidates. And so that is happening more and more. And, you know, more choices for voters is a good thing. So we're not opposed to that. What it means, though, is that primary voters have to sift through an awful lot to get to who their favorite is, what the controversies are.
It's more work for them.
What they think of it. It is more work. It's a lot more work. And in an age where advertising in this cycle is maybe disinforming more than it's informing, it's a lot to try to wade through. There are questions about some of the candidates that are difficult to answer. Some of them want to talk about it, some of them don't. And so it's a lot for voters to sink their teeth into. That's the good part of it. They've got a lot to choose from, but they've got to do their homework.
To see my full discussion with Rider University's Mayk, check out the latest episode of my Battleground Politics podcast. It's streaming now wherever you get your podcasts. We'll be right back.
This is NBC10 At Issue.
A reminder that today is the last day of early voting in New Jersey. Polls are open today from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. You must be already registered as either a Democrat or Republican to vote in the primary. NBC10 has all the information about New Jersey's primary, from the key races on the ballot to key deadlines that voters need to know. You can find our election guide on NBC10.com and the free NBC10 app. That does it for this edition of NBC10 At Issue. Thanks for joining us. Have a great day.